What up, blockchain nation? What up, YouTube? So today I'm doing something that's different, not blockchain related, but it's something that I get a lot of questions about. So have you ever wanted to work with Amazon? Have you ever interviewed with Amazon? I'm wondering what the entire process is like. Well, I'm here to share my own experience. Let me start by giving a quick disclaimer out there. I'm not doing this on behalf of Amazon, and I do not work with Amazon. Now, before you change the channel, I'll say this. I personally love what I do. I have one of the coolest jobs in the planet. Currently, at the time I'm recording this video, I do not work with Amazon. I think it's a great company, but I love my job. In other words, try not to get me fired. But here's my point. I've interviewed Amazon a couple of times, and this is my own lessons from my own experience with them. I think it's a great place to work. By the time I'm recording this, I work somewhere else. I hope that's clear. Anyways, so I promise you this is going to help. These are going to be my quick tips on what my own experience was like, my takeaway from the experience, and I hope this can help you as well. So, you ready? See, I'm ready. All right, so here's how the interview process has been. I've interviewed for a couple of roles with Amazon in the past, and one was let me not give the details, but they've kind of followed the same format. It starts with a technical interview. Usually it's about an hour-long technical interview where they ask you all sorts of questions. Now, depending on the role that you're applying for, it might be different for you, but in general, my summary is this is kind of like a template that I think even if you follow this template, it may work in your unique situation. So if you're applying for a role that's like a solutions architect, software developer, maybe in the role of, well, let's start with solutions. Let's be more specific with solutions architect, software developer. Now, it might take a different format, but this is something that kind of format that will help. So first is a 1 hour technical interview. Now they'll ask you all sorts of questions just to find a feel of where you are. If it's more of a coding role, like a software development role, they will ask you questions specific to coding, depending on also how many years of experience, but it will range from what algorithms have you worked on. It will range from what's the difference between inheritance and polymorphism. Those are, or how do you explain the concept of object-oriented programming? Just have a feel of where you are. Now, if it's like a solutions architect role, it'll be more broad. Like, what do you feel about explain the difference between a solid-state drive and a regular hard drive, or explain what's SAN storage, or explain in terms of networking what's IPv4, or the difference between IPv4 or IPv6. Just have an idea where you are. So if you're curious in all that stuff, personally, I looked at this website, and this is something I still look at, just to have some idea, because I consistently love to learn, even though I'm not trying to interview for anything anyways. But here we go. So NAS versus SAN, network attached storage, or a storage area network. What does FTP mean? I mean, just watching a couple of these videos, and they're not very long. They're very short, simple videos. So let's take any time to look at some of this stuff. What's RAID? And they're not even that many videos. So DHCP. So just to give you an idea, some of these things you already know, but just to kind of reinforce your learning, or if you're clueless about a couple of these concepts, this just helps to give you an idea. All these things are not rocket science, and they're things that can be learned. So this first is a 1 hour tech interview, just to kind of see where you are. Just to go over your knowledge of networking, storage, software development. That's an area of a solutions architect. But if you're interviewing for a software developer, it'll be questions more related to programming concepts. What frameworks have you used? Are you more of a front-end person, a back-end person? If you say your strength is Node.js, they'll ask you specific questions to know, just basically an idea. But it might not even go that deep in the first interview. It's just a recruiter, just to feel for where you are. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, well, if you get to advance past the first stage, the third stage or the second stage is cool. So before I go into the second stage, I'll say this: in preparing for the next stage, which is usually in like an on-site interview, or at the time I'm recording this video with the whole COVID-19 restrictions and most people are working from home, it will be an online interview whereby you would it take from 4 to 6 hours. 4 to 6 hours of interviews. Yeah, and I'll explain the details. So as you're preparing between the first interview and the second interview, I would say build something on AWS. Learn how to use AWS services. Learn how to use, set up an EC2 instance. Learn how to use an S3 bucket. Learn how to create or put objects in S3 bucket, create an S3 bucket, create an endpoint in an S3 bucket, stuff like that. Just have a basic idea. Play around with the free tier stuff on AWS. If possible, build something especially the development role, deploy it on AWS. Maybe if it's Node or Ruby, whatever you use, whether you're setting up an EBS instance, something just to have an idea of how AWS works. So I'll say build something in AWS will be my personal recommendation. And then the on-site interview. Now here are the last, second, or whatever you want to call it, interview, which is the long, cruel, grueling interview. Now what that looks like is usually have about 4 interviews. So each interview can be with 2 people, 1 or 2 people. So you have an hour interview, which will be focused on technical questions as well. Another interview, second one, which will be, now if it's a developer role, it'll be more of coding or whiteboarding, but depending on if it's like a solutions architect role, it will also be another tech interview with a more senior tech person. And it will range from behavioral questions to tech questions. But the second one should be about behavioral questions. Then you get a break, because that's 2 hours of just hammering you. Then you now go to another round of interviews. So the first will be, secondly, at this time, the third interview, which will be with 1 person or 2 people, which will also be technical questions and a lot of behavioral scenario questions. And then lastly, the last interview, which might also be technical. So they all try and have a feel for where you are and asking you questions. If you see your strength is networking, if you see your strength is storage, and I'm speaking regarding a solutions architect role, please make sure you at least never say I don't know it. Try as much as possible to not get stuck, but I think a default, if you're totally clueless, would be that's not something I have. I have a high level understanding of that. So even if you don't have an understanding of it, you shouldn't just say I don't know. You could be like, well, that's something I need to research further, something I've heard about before, but just don't be blank, okay? So let me show you a resource that I think is also great for behavioral questions, which is, there's so many of them, but I like this guy. His name is Croitor, and he's very, very good at tell me how they deal with what's this? You're a difficult customer. Well, that's a good one. So it's something that you should watch. I personally have watched his videos, and I think they're great for answering questions. So lastly, I'll talk about Amazon's core principles. Now, when you're answering behavioral questions, you use the STAR technique, which is you talk about a situation, the task, action, and what the result was. So you answer those questions, kind of you tailoring those questions using Amazon's leadership principles, which are customer obsession, ownership, invent and simplify. Their leaders are right a lot, learn and be curious. This is just a link, you can watch this, you can read this. But even if you don't memorize all of them, for me, just take 2 or 3. Now, 2 that I love this one, customer obsession and ownership. So let me give an example of the behavioral question. Let's say a question might be in the range of, give me a time where you had a project and your project failed. How did you handle that? And tell me what your experience was like. That's a behavioral scenario. So I could give a nice one like, okay, at the time I was on a project where we were implementing a large solution across a major bank. And being as I was in financial services for the longest time, we were consolidating a legacy system or a current system and bringing a legacy system onto that current system. Project was fine, everything looked good, but on implementation day, everything that could go wrong went wrong. So we had a long queue of customers in the banking hall, we had frustrated tellers, and it was just not the greatest image for the bank. It was a very, very, I would say, a huge failure at the time. Here's how I handled it. And so we went back to the drawing board, we reviewed our problems, we saw where we went wrong, we noticed that we had, and then I'll go into technical details about how our web servers, we did not specify properly the number of web servers that we needed or number of load balancers that we needed as well. So we reviewed the architecture, and then we had to manage customers. Now I'm bringing this customer obsession into play. I had 2 customers. My first customers were my colleagues or the tellers who are facing our external customers. I had to manage the expectations. I had to work with them one-on-one. I had to reassure them. I had to list out all the challenges that they faced on deployment day. Those are my first customers. Second customers were the customers themselves, our external customers who walked into the bank, who were frustrated. As much as possible, I tried to engage them, which that's what I actually did. I was in the banking hall explaining to them that, hey, we apologize, we're having some technical difficulties. I was supposed to just throw in my fellow colleagues who are tellers under the bus. I was also customer facing as well, because I believe that our customers are very important. So yeah, I showed customer obsession. Yeah, and I showed ownership. Yeah, we made some wrong decisions. We took full responsibility. and then we started to act on the action points that we need to act on going forward. Maybe I didn't rephrase that well. My point is, I used an actual scenario. That's actually a story that I had. That's something that actually happened. And then I just took two of these principles: customer obsession and ownership, and I related to them. So, so those are examples of behavioral questions that you can tell me about time when you fail, tell me about the time when you had a difficult customer, and you have to kind of use all these to answer. So I mentioned the situation. The situation was, there was this big failure. What was the task? The task was that we had to deliver a legacy system, a new system, or bring a legacy bank and an existing bank onto the same core banking platform. What was the actions we took? And then what was the result? So for me, I mean, that's kind of a way, I just took that from the top of my head, how I'll frame the question. Because a lot of those things are good, but my personal opinion will be, try and prepare as many as possible. Which is why I think this video is a good resource. I'll show you this video again. How many stories going into a behavioral interview? Please watch this video by, I don't know who Dan Croitor, I've never met him personally. I'm not saying this to promote anything. I didn't get anything out of telling you guys this, but personally I think this guy's great. So 5 mistakes using the STAR method. So yeah, I mean, you can watch this. I think this makes sense. And so try and memorize as many stories as possible. Go look through your career. And even if you don't have that much experience, still I'm sure there's something out there that you can use. I know a lot of people try to use everyday scenarios and say, well, there's a time in my life when I failed and they use a personal experience. I don't know if that's great. So you worry about what will happen if you don't have so many stories. Even if you can have 1 or 2 or 3. My suggestion would be have as much as 3 stories. And then you can now work those stories, because for a lot of our experience, we can tailor it to a couple of behavioral questions. I mean, the scenario I just painted works well for tell me about time when you failed. It also works about a time when you says, tell me about time when you have to deal with a difficult customer. I have a story for that. True story. I was in Sierra Leone working as a consultant. I was working on a core banking application a very, very long time ago, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was the Sierra Leonean army actually came into the bank to what was it they were trying to do? Trying to get their salary. So I paid that day. All of a sudden, the entire network froze, and the tellers couldn't do anything. And I talk about difficult customers. I'm talking about the Sierra Leonean army, and they wanted their money. They wanted their money yesterday, and nothing was working. And I had to deal with that. So, I mean, I could tell you stories for days. But my point is, even you can look at your own experience, look at what you've got in your own career, and then try and look for all those scenarios and how you can use them to answer these questions. So, customer obsession for me was a big one that I memorized. And taking ownership is also a good one. So look for ones that work for you, hire and develop the best. They think big, insist on the highest standards, you don't compromise value, which is great. Bias for action, frugality, and trust, dive deep. And the rest, and the rest, and the rest. So I wish I had something else. So yeah, I really hope that helps. Lessons from my own experience. Once again, a huge disclaimer: do not work for Amazon at the time of recording this video, and I love what I do. Did I say that? Did I say that properly? Yes, I love what I do. So try not to get me in trouble. Anyways, this is just for me, helping the world, trying to give you guys my own opinions of my own experience, and I hope it helps somebody out there. So that is all I have. That's all I have. So until next time, my wish for you is that you learn more about the concepts or the technologies that you're trying to work on, so that you can be the best that you can be, whether it's through cloud computing, whether it's machine learning, whether it's AI, whether it's web applications, whether it's mobile applications, whether it's data science and data analytics, or whether it's my favorite, blockchain technology. So there's some videos that you can watch below which are more specific to blockchain. This is just something I'm just doing now, talking about AWS. But until next time, let's go change the world.